Hey, my name is Chris. I live in Las Vegas and I'm an ex-evangelical Christian and worship leader. And today I want to talk about what's going on in the world now. If you haven't noticed, if you haven't been watching the news, you might have noticed that Donald Trump is now the president yet again. And he had a strong backing from evangelical Christians. And I still follow some evangelical friends that I used to go to church with about 30 years ago. And it's so funny to see their take on what's happening in the world nowadays. Now, a lot of evangelical Christians nowadays, they sided with Donald Trump because they believe that he is the God-chosen king for the United States, for America. Now, I was raised very conservative Christian, but I was also raised to believe in the Constitution and America and serving your country. So I know the Constitution enough to know that we don't have a king. And I know the Constitution enough to know that all people, whether they're a citizen or not, they have the right to due process. I'm one of those weird people who reads, and I'm one of those weird people who believes in having an education. Now, none of those things were paramount when you're a Christian. Number one is your faith in God. And even if your faith in God betrays you, that is number one, that is paramount. Now, you might be thinking, hey, this sounds a lot like FAFO. This sounds a lot like Trump voters learning that they didn't vote against their own, that they voted against their own self-interest. Now, this is kind of that, and this is kind of not that. So, 30 years ago, I was a born-again Christian, and I was a worship pastor, and it took a long time to get to that place to be a worship pastor. I had apprenticed under two different worship pastors as a kid. And to look back at those worship pastors now, because I still follow both of those worship pastors online, just to see what their viewpoints are on the news and on life, right? And when you're a kid, you're very impressionable. You look at the older adults in your life and you're like, hey, I want to be like that adult, right? Or I want to grow up to be the man of God that that person is, right? So, two worship pastors. Let's call one Ted and let's call the other one Keith. Now, these were worship pastors that were at my church that I admired very much. One was a worship pastor, but he also was the pastor, the worship leader of the youth group. And the other one was the full-time worship pastor that led music on Sundays. I believe Ted, he led music on Wednesdays, right? So, they both had very unique, different styles of music. They were both guitar players. They could both play a little bit of keyboard, but one was kind of a hippie and one was kind of conservative, right? I kind of thought I wanted to be just like the hippie when I grew up. I thought that I wanted to be like that guy. He kind of had long hair. He had a little bit of gut. He played guitar, but he sang with passion. He wrote his own music as well, not just like Christian contemporary music. He wrote his own music as well. And you could tell his heart was fully in to being a worship leader and to bringing people into the throne room of God with music. And looking at that example as a kid, I totally wanted to be that when I became a worship leader myself. And when I did become a worship leader, I did model myself after that one worship leader, Keith. And the funny thing about Keith is back then, he would always make jokes about people and about life and about minorities and about things that he saw in society that he was kind of judgmental about. Even though he was telling jokes, I knew even way back when that he was saying jokes at the expense of other people. And he was kind of low-key racist. But other than that, he's a really great guy. So, the other guy, Ted, he was always very straight-laced. He led the youth group, and he led worship on Wednesday nights. And his music style was the same and different from the dude Keith. I remember there was this one year where Ted was Jesus in the Easter, the Easter show. Whenever, you do a musical for Easter, he was Jesus at the time. So, again, two very powerful, very strong men of God with strong faith were my examples when I was coming up to be a worship leader. And for some reason, I wanted to be like Keith, and I did not want to be like Ted. And I couldn't tell you why. Maybe because I believed Ted was playing favorites in the youth group. Maybe I had a thing. Maybe I thought Ted was judgmental. Maybe I thought Ted picked favorites, right? Maybe that's why I didn't like the guy. Or at least I didn't want to be like him when I grew up. Now, the things you learn as you get older. And I will tell you why my stance on both of these guys have flipped on their heads, right? Again, back in the day, I wanted to be like Keith, and I did not want to be like Ted. And now that I look at both of their internet presences, 30 years later, dude, I totally want to be like Ted, and I do not want to be like Keith ever. And I will tell you why. So, at the very beginning of the video, I was talking about how Trump is the president, and a whole bunch of evangelicals followed this guy, and they basically think that Trump is going to be a great tool to get everything that they want to get their Christian nation back. Not that anybody took their Christian nation away from them. I don't know why evangelicals have this victim-like mentality where they believe everybody is stealing their religion away from them. Nobody is stealing your religion away from you. Your religion is dying, but your religion is dying because you're doing it to yourselves. But anyways, that's a whole other story. So, a whole bunch of evangelicals hitched themselves onto the Trump train, thinking that Trump is going to give them everything they want. They're going to get a rude awakening from that very soon. But the deal is, Keith, all during the election campaign, Trump, everything that this dude posted online was Trump. The Democrats are scum. The Democrats are criminals. He wanted all the Democrats being locked up. This is what Keith wants. And this is what he wants even nowadays. And the funny thing is, even after his side has won, even though Trump is the president, I will still look at Keith's feed, and he is the most angriest bitch I've ever seen online. He wants to lock up everybody who's a Democrat, and they haven't even made any crimes. And the funny thing is, what gets me with this guy, who I used to want to be like, is one of the most angriest, prejudiced, low-key racist people I've seen online. And I don't see any posts that would tell me that he was a Christian. And I don't see any posts that would tell me that he's got the love of Christ in his heart. And ain't that a shame, right? Like, one of the places on earth where you are seen the most and you are judged the most by who you are, by your character, believe it or not, the internet. And he can't even put his best foot forward or wear his Sunday best and show that, like, I'm going to represent Christ and I'm going to be a good person. He is one of the most hateful, racist people I've ever seen online. Keith, right? The dude I used to want to be like. And I thank my lucky stars that I am nothing like that guy. That I believe in representation. I believe in minorities. I believe in DEI. I believe that human beings have equal rights and should have equal access. And I believe in equity. And I believe in health equity. My job is literally, I do social work. My job is literally to go to homeless camps and give homeless people health care. That is my job. That is what I do, like Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week. So that being the case, that is my job. Like, it confounds me why Christians hate so much. And the funny thing is their side won, and the Christians are still angry. Now let's go back to Ted. Let's go back to the other worship leader. Because the other worship leader, honestly, I follow him on Facebook, the sweetest, nicest guy you could ever think of. And let me give you an example. 2 weeks ago, I saw Ted on Facebook, and one of his posts were very much like the old Ted that I knew 30 years ago in youth group. He was just like, you know what, brother? It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, how old you are, how young you are, how rich you are, what minority you are, whether you can walk, whether you're in a wheelchair, whether you're healthy, whether you're sick. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is your relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, he had me at the Jesus Christ part, but still. I mean, he lost me at the Jesus Christ part. I'm no longer religious. But the funny thing is, looking back at who he was and who he is now, I would most rather be Ted than Keith now. And why? He's a nice person. He's not hateful. All of his posts are about Jesus. They're all about how the love of Jesus and how salvation can save you and you and you and you, all of you. How Jesus is the answer. And the funny thing was, he was like that 30 years ago. That dude has not changed, and he hasn't changed in a good way, if you know what I mean. Some people get older, they get more bitter, they get more angry. And I think that's what happened to the other guy. That's what happened to Keith. He turned old, he turned angry, he turned bitter. And I believe that there's reasons behind both of their inclinations in life. And this is only a theory, and I have no evidence for this theory, but I'm going to say it's socioeconomic. That's why I think that one is happier than the other. And I'm not going to say that they're not both Jesus-loving Christians, because they both are. The one with the more love would be the guy Ted, but they both love Jesus. They're both born again. They both believe in the same book, right? So here's my socioeconomic theory on why one of them is a dick and one of them is actually a genuine nice person. Now, Ted, 30 years ago, when I knew him back in church, he had a great job. He worked for the phone company. That job is one of those jobs when you're working for a utility, you're going to be working that job forever. It usually comes with a pension. It usually comes with a 401k. It usually pays pretty well, especially if you're working for a utility, if you're working for the city, if you're working for the county, if you're working for the state. In my state, if you have a county job, it pays more than a state job. Even myself, I work a county job. It pays well. I have a pension. I have like full benefits. I do what I do because I love people, and that's just the icing on the cake. I get to help people and get paid for it. But the motivation for me doing my job was helping people. Thank goodness I have benefits on the side so I don't have to worry about paying bills, right? Economically, I'm doing okay. I'm an all-around generally happy person, unless like weird shit goes down in my life. I'm going to be sad like everybody else. But at the end of the day, I'm doing all right, and I have just a little bit extra so I can give back. And I love to give back to my community, especially when I'm working. Now, Keith, on the other hand, this is my socioeconomic observation with this guy. He always kind of jumped from job to job to job. He always did stuff like maintenance work. He always did stuff where he worked with his hands. He didn't really get a job doing anything technical as far as being an engineer or being some sort of, one of those kind of jobs to where you're in a utility and you're going to keep that job forever. I don't think he ever got a job where he got a 401k. I don't think he ever put any money away. I really just don't think he thought about it. I don't think he knew that economically I need to plan for an uncertain future. And now I think that he's at retirement age. He has no retirement or very little retirement, and he's just an angry old white guy. And his religion isn't making him happy. And believe it or not, I don't think his religion would ever make him happy. I believe that he was unhappy in the first place. Jesus, or the illusion of having a relationship with Jesus, isn't going to fix your life. It will make you feel happy on the surface, but the real problems in life, they will always surface. And religion, I believe, is not a panacea to life's problems. I'm saying that now because I live a scientifically based life. I don't depend on religion or superstition for my decision making or to comfort me. So, again, if I follow Keith on Instagram, everything he posts is a story about how he's angry at immigrants, how he's angry at minorities, how he's angry at, I guess, poor people taking money away from white people. That's what I'm getting from his feed. He is old and he is angry. And the funny thing is, like, no evidence of Jesus in this dude's life. And the funny thing is, he's been strumming guitar on Sundays for the last 30 years, playing worship, and yet he's like the most prickiest people I've seen online. And again, the other guy, Ted, the other worship leader who I did not want to be like as a kid, because I thought he played favorites in youth group, the sweetest, most nicest, approachable dude you could ever think of online. Now, it's funny how 30 years could flip your entire like perspective on its nose to tell you that, man, human beings are funny and that they're not who you think they are when you're a child. And the whole idea of hero worship can bite you in the ass, because I really, really wanted to be like that guy Keith. And I look now and I'm just like, oh my goodness, thank goodness I got out of that religion alive. Thank goodness I realized that the quality of a human being is in their character and how they treat themselves, how they treat others, how they see the world, and how they project themselves in the world around them. And you know what? The world isn't perfect. There's so many things we have to work on. Our country is more polarized and disjointed than it ever has been. Back in the day when I was a little kid, I used to wish I could time travel back to the 1960s, because the music, the fashion, like everything, there was a revolution going on, a cultural revolution going on in the 1960s. And now as an adult, I feel that I don't need to time travel, because, I'm sorry, the civil rights campaign, it's still happening. It's come back again. And the women's rights movement, that's back again. Everything that I wanted to experience in the 1960s is back, and we are experiencing it nowadays. So, why would I want to go back in time to experience what I'm already seeing today? The funny thing is, we tend to romanticize a time before our time, thinking that they were better, think that they had it more together. But I think that the kids in the 60s realized that they didn't like the society that they saw around them, and they decided that we're the youth, it's time to change it. And the funny thing is, I think that the Gen Zs and the millennials now, they're having the same realization that the adults before them screwed up the world, and that they're very unhappy with it, and it's going to be their job to change it. Now, when the boomers die, and when Gen X starts to kick, because there are a lot of Gen X did a lot of drugs, they're not going to stay around forever. When my generation and the boomers are finally gone, hopefully Gen Y, Gen Z, and the millennials, they will take the reins and they will do something better than what we did to it. Now, I am one of those people who's trying to fight the problem and trying to be a part of the solution. But I will admit, at the beginnings of my life, yeah, I was very right-wing Christian. I was very much a consumer. I was very much into commercialism and everything that's keeping our materialism, everything that's keeping America like going today. I was a big consumer of that. And now I believe in, I don't know, taking care of the environment, being smart with our resources, being kind with each other, not just being nice, not just playing polite, but being genuine and being kind. Again, not out of religious conviction, but because it's the right thing to do. That is my freedom. That is what I know will change the world. Not a Bible, not a ridiculous superstitious story from thousands of years ago, but being a genuine person who's lived through diversity and wants to help others who are living through that same diversity. As far as being an evangelical Christian, a big debate that goes on is, am I a complete atheist, an agnostic atheist? Am I going to burn in hell forever? Or am I a backslidden Christian, and that any day now I could become a Christian once again and rededicate my life to Christ. I honestly can't tell you the truth of what it could be, because it could very well happen. I could very well become a born-again Christian again. I could fall into dementia. I could hit my head. I could lose my memory and forget all the religious trauma that I've ever experienced. And I forget all about the religious documentation and archaeological, anthropological documentation that tells me that the Bible never happened. I could totally forget all of that and become a Christian again. But honestly, I feel more comfortable being an agnostic atheist, not knowing the truth, if there was a real God or if anything in the Bible ever really happened. Because doing right, because it is the right thing to do, I believe is the better way. Trying to do the right thing to help human beings because it's the right thing to do, that's the better way. Not using religion as some kind of moral high standing to stand over your fellow human beings in some odd judgment. That's not for me. And I've seen, by the example of these two Christians, that being that mean moral judge in the sky is not for me. So who do I want to be? Do I want to be Keith, the mean, hateful, angry worship leader? Or do I want to be Ted, the nice, very helpful, very kind Christian? I think I'd rather be Ted. Hugs, health, and happiness from Las Vegas. I'm Chris, and I'm an ex-evangelical Christian and worship pastor.